Coming up tonight on the Cruise View, it's time to say goodbye to the Quantum. The sailing is coming to an end and we'll take a look back at some of the highlights over the past 19 days. Plus, we'll be talking with the captain of the Quantum of the Seas and find out what it takes to run such a brand new ship. And of course, we'll take a look ahead, see what's coming up next. So, let's set sail. Welcome to the 19th and final episode of this sailing of the Cruise View on board the Quantum of the Seas. And today is the 11th day of that second sailing, the second of 2 legs during this cruise. And unfortunately that means it's all over come tomorrow when we pull back into Cape Liberty for the second time and have to leave this time. But our top stories today, basically, it's time to look back at this sailing and see how things went now that we're finally done with it and compare it to the previous one, because if you've watched the whole series, you know the first sailing really did not go all too well. This sailing, though, glad to say was much better, and I'll talk about it a little later, but right now I can say that we had 3,502 guests on board and 1,627 crew. So I think earlier I might have speculated that it was more people on board this sailing, but we actually lost more passengers and crew this sailing than we did in the previous, but it was still at an even rate, so it still ended up about 2 passengers for every crew member on board the ship, and they're still well above their crew capacity, with many of the crew having to stay in guest cabins in order to have enough space for them. So it's certainly not quite at full capacity at this point, even on this sailing, and that may eventually have some other effects on her that'll give people a little bit of a different opinion than what I might have experienced, but overall it is the first real sailing, in my opinion, of the Quantum, and that says a lot about how things may go in the future. But continuing on now, we're gonna take a look at our location for today. Of course, we are headed back to Cape Liberty and we are almost there. Our noontime location was about 37 degrees north by 71 degrees west. That put us just about even with the entrance to the Chesapeake Bay. And since we are now getting north and we did pass through that cold front and nor'easter, we did have much cooler conditions today. The listed high was 66, but I'm not sure if that might have been the hottest point of the entire day, because it certainly never felt like it was even close to the 60s today. It was a very cold day out, and part of that could have been the fact that we had 25-knot winds, which made it very rough to be out on those top decks. And sunrise this morning was 7:41 a.m. with a sunset at 5:32 p.m. But there were still a lot of things to do, as the compass summary shows, and the first thing at 12:30, as well as a couple other times during the day, but the 12:30 one specifically, was a selection of robo shows. Now this has shown up on the compass multiple times a day, all sailing this time, as well as the last, I think, day or 2 of the previous sailing. But today was a special one at 12:30. Talking to the guys in charge of those robots and making all these shows happen, they mentioned that they had the robot portion of another series of little robo shows completed and just needed the graphics people to come on board and clean them up. That of course happened, I believe, St. Kitts or Barbados, one of those 2 days they boarded. And today we finally got to see 2 new robo shows that nobody has ever seen before. Now they were both in a very early stage, and based on what we've seen of the other robo shows and how they've improved on those over time, it's clear that these will get much better, but it still was a cool proof of concept of just what is capable. The first show was kind of an animated little story that you went through. A little bit of movement of the screens, really it was more of a cinematic effect using the robots, which is really neat to see. But it's the second one, which was all about science and chemistry that really shows off the robots and what they're capable of, with each robot acting individually and the videos interacting with each other. It's without a doubt the coolest robo show of the set that they have at this point. Unfortunately, it at this point was still very far from complete. The animation's there, the robots are there, but they're not quite synced up. You can see an animation of pouring while the jar is all the way over here. And there's a couple scenes where there's a line that's supposed to follow the robots while the robots are moving, and that line's supposed to stay connected. They end up getting disconnected and you get this choppy line. So they certainly don't have everything synced up at this point. But it was still nice of them to show us just what they're working on, because it is the last day of the sailing, and of course if they didn't show it today, we wouldn't have just missed a not quite ready show. We would have missed the show entirely, as we won't see that. The Quantum is leaving. Who knows if these will move to Anthem, and nobody knows who's going to even come back on board a Quantum class ship. So this really was the last chance. So it was a show it or don't show it opportunity, and I'm personally glad they chose to show it and let everybody see what they're working on, what else is coming in the future, and of course give their feedback so they can make changes to it and improve it over time. We of course saw a similar thing last night with the first ever virtual concert being shown. So they are working to ensure that even if they can't give us a complete experience, they give us at least some kind of experience, and it's nice to see these things in their early stages and sort of watch that development process over time. And they did have more than one of those robo shows today, but it was only that 12:30 one that showed the new ones. The later ones showed the same two sequences that were used on all the other robo shows, which really was just a one-time special that you either needed to know they were thinking of doing it today or just happened to be in the room in order to catch it. So it was a special treat for us. Then directly following that, also in 270, we did not have a 270 technology talk or tour like we did last sailing, and the captain's corner was moved from the last day to the second to last day. So instead, 1 p.m. was the coffee chat with your cruise director, Jimmy Rhodes, and it was titled Adventures in China, where he basically went through a series of blog posts that he made back when he first went over to China to be cruise director and how his experience went over there. So it was certainly entertaining, and it allowed him a last-minute chance to sort of connect with the guests and share some more information about himself and his life. And it was a nice little treat for this last day at sea, especially with the poor weather. It was great to just sit in 270 and watch that, and it seemed like a lot of people really turned out and enjoyed it. So that was certainly a great item for him to add to the schedule on this sailing. And it wasn't on the last one, though he did mention the content of it a little bit after the captain's corner. So I don't know if the interest that was shown from the crowd during that little conversation is what led to this, but it was certainly a nice little event. And then following that, I did a couple activities of my own. The first, North Star, was actually running today. I got on it at 3 p.m., which I believe may have been the first ride of the day, and it was incredibly windy up there. I was really surprised that it even operated. The moment that they shut the locks off and got it free, you could just feel the whole thing swaying. But even before that, they couldn't even get it running, and for once it wasn't because it was broken, it was because it was working right. They had to actually work through the override system in order to disable the automatic wind detection system that was telling them it was way too windy to run North Star and would not let it operate. So just to run it, they had to go through and disable that whole process, and then eventually they were able to get it up in the air. And even with those rough wind conditions, the ship wasn't moving too much, but the wind certainly was shaking the carriage. You could still move out to the side of the ship. Today we were off of the starboard side, so a different side than last time. So once again, incredible experience with North Star. I really don't think there is a bad experience on a North Star unless maybe you get stuck in it for a little too long. But even under these really rough, windy conditions, cold conditions, it was still an incredible ride and certainly a unique experience knowing they had to do all those overrides just to even allow the ride to happen. And of course, if you're scared of the North Star, that should give you a little more comfort that there are that level of security checks in place to ensure everything's safe, that they feel comfortable enough to actually disable some at times and still operate. And then at 4 p.m. today was the Flying Trapeze in Seaplex, which always seems to operate about 4 to 7 p.m., which is a really poor time. Usually I would get ready for dinner around that time. But today, it's the 19th day, haven't done it yet, had to give it a shot. And I'd say it was fun. It lived up to all my expectations of it, except it was much easier in my opinion than I expected. It looks much more difficult than it is. You really can just get up there and go and give it a shot and see how you do, because it really isn't all that difficult, and at worst you just won't be able to succeed and get your legs up, but you'll still enjoy the experience. And I'm kind of sad I really didn't give it a shot earlier in the cruise, because it was a fun experience and I would have loved to do it again. And then tonight we had some more structured events. Once again, we had a headliner show tonight, and it was Earl Turner, who is a singer, and he put on a performance with a whole variety of different songs, from old classics to even a rap song. Overall, it felt very geared towards the older ages. I personally was a little bored by it. I don't think they were really targeting my age. And he even explicitly stated it several times in it that it was targeted more towards the older audience. So I didn't personally enjoy it too much, but it seemed like the rest of the ship really got into it and enjoyed it and had a good time with it. And of course, it's a large ship, a lot of people, so they do have to accommodate everyone. And if this sailing, the old people are really the majority, so they are the ones that have to be accommodated the most. And the rest of the entertainment up to this point has been something that I found interesting, and for the most part at least talk to the younger generations if it didn't span all generations. And then following that, I once again attended Starwater. Last night at Starwater, you really can't get enough of that show. No matter where you sit, it's a new experience, so you just got to go as much as you can. So that about does it for today's Compass. And moving on to our Daily Dine. Today we do not have one. We've already gone through all 18 of our dining venues on board the Quantum of the Seas. So instead, we're going to take a look back and review just how well this dynamic dining process is working. I said during the previous sailing I wanted to reserve opinion until it was all said and done. We're done with the full thing. And I can say now, we do have alternative menus in select venues. I've been able to get one in American Icon as well as Silk, but both Chic and the Grand at this point still do not have alternative menus available. The one for American Icon, not too interesting. It really feels like the same sort of stuff that's on the traditional menu. The one for Silk, however, is a little confusing because it is full dishes that do not appear in any form on the regular menu and feel almost like dishes that should just be added to the traditional menu, as they are fully themed to the Asian cuisine style. They really fit the theming of Silk and have no reason not to be on that normal menu. Maybe we'll see that in the future. It seems almost like that added with the traditional menu gives you the expanded selection they promised us but haven't delivered on. So at least for Silk, they're doing a better job than they were originally. We just need to wait on the other two venues to get an alternative menu, and in my opinion, American Icon to get a better alternative menu. But dynamic dining as a whole has been surprisingly smooth. A lot of people have been upset about it. We saw that in the Captain's Corner. People were angry about it. If you're angry about it, it probably isn't anything on board, because it really does work. I'm not sure where people have the issue with it. You have 4 venues. You can pick which one you want to go to. We've had reservations for every single night. I made them, of course, with the pre-cruise planner ahead of time, which is a horrible experience and the worst part of dynamic dining. And I can tell you, if you go on board, it's not much better. So really, no matter what, you gotta plan it, and it's gonna be terrible no matter how you do it. So just get it done, because that's the difference in whether you have a good experience with dynamic dining or not. As long as you have that reservation, things seem to work. In 19 days, I never really waited in line. I think the first day, usually there's a little line as people were confused asking questions, but overall it was always straight into the venue. If there was a line, it was usually not because things were slow or there was a problem. It was normally that too many people showed up at once. They only have so many people per venue to seat you. So of course, if everybody is in the process of seating someone, you're gonna have to wait for the next person to be available. I never actually saw a problem where there wasn't any tables available for the people that showed up. So that's at least a sign that the reservation system is spreading people out properly, because even during my sailing, I often arrived 15 minutes early or 15 minutes late and still never had an issue getting right into it. If you've ever done my time dining, it is a very familiar feeling to that. It works the same way, you just can go to 4 different places instead of 1 now. Once in the venues, it's obviously different. You don't have the same waiter every night, which isn't the way my time dining is. But you do have the option. If you get a waiter that you like, you can request that same one again. We did that in several of the venues. I believe 1 or 2 we may have kept getting new ones just because we didn't find one we liked, but I know for at least 1 venue we had the same waiter all the time that we went there because we enjoyed them and just kept requesting them. And if you do that, you get that traditional experience. They get very social, they understand what you want, what you like, they have everything ready for you, and it's a very traditional experience, but you now get 4 of those traditional experiences. Unfortunately, they keep saying that they're logging data on us, that they're writing down what we like, the fact that we want tea or we want lemons, whatever it is. And at this point, I have yet to see that ever come into effect. They're supposed to have that stuff logged, so when you do that day 1, no matter where you go day 2 or who your waiter is, they have that info and can do the same thing, give you that traditional experience. I haven't seen that occur at all yet, so I'm not sure that they're logging it. I don't know if it's a problem with the system not functioning as much as I don't think anyone's even put stuff in, even if it did function. So that will hopefully make the experience better once they do get it in place. But it is not currently there, but asking for the same waiter will give you sort of a workaround for that for the time. But the big thing that really killed dynamic dining, no matter how smooth it runs, no matter how great an experience it is, and they did succeed on giving higher quality food, all that good stuff they said, it still is killed by the fact that the pre-cruise planner does not work. So while it may work on the ship, you have no way to make those reservations and you can't get into the restaurants. That's not going to make the system in any way function to the way it needs to be. And until they really work out that whole process, dynamic dining as a whole can't function at all and will always be a failed system. The other big killer of it is the menus. You've got 4 menus no matter how long your sailing is. On the 8-night sailing, the second time I went to several of the venues, I already could not find anything to eat there. So instead of 14 menus, and in my opinion, each one of those 14 menus was better than any of the 4 involved in dynamic dining, you now have 4 menus you must eat from every single night. So it's really a downgrade to those menus. So hopefully they'll give better menus as a whole, but also just give more of them. More options per menu, more menus so that it changes throughout the sailing, just something to give you more food, because it really is not that good of a selection of menus at this point. And there's a lot of stuff missing. There's very little Italian on it. There's really no soups except for I think 1 soup in silk. And there's absolutely no chilled soups anywhere on the ship, which if you're in the Caribbean and it's hot out, you really want something cool and relaxing to sort of soothe you after a long day out on the beach or something. So I'm not sure why they removed that, but it's not even available in the Windjammer. So that's a major downgrade of the whole dynamic dining process. But of course, the menus are what seem to be the most volatile item. They're constantly tweaking it, and hopefully that's a good sign that they will look into this, and maybe, probably not within a month, but maybe within 6 months, we'll see some major changes to it. And I don't think pre-cruise plan or any of that will get fixed anytime soon, but at least maybe they'll get the menus fixed, and that'll be a huge upgrade and really get dynamic dining to where it can actually be a success, because functionality wise it works. It's just flawed by those menus and the reservation system. But in addition to that dynamic dining review, I also have a bonus dining venue. While not one of the official 18 dining venues on board the Quantum of the Seas, they did, towards the end of the process, announce La Patisserie, which is a new venue located on the Esplanade. Brand new venue, first being introduced on board the Quantum of the Seas, La Patisserie is a replacement for the cupcake cupboard on the previous ships. Instead of a small location dedicated purely to cupcakes, this venue offers a variety of different cupcakes as well as chocolates and other gourmet items that you can purchase for a premium price. It is designed to be a quaint little French bistro or coffee shop that you can come to and just grab a premium coffee or pastry and sit down and relax. They also have a variety of different items that you can purchase that are designed to take home as gifts for other people, such as boxes of chocolates or candy. Located directly off the Royal Esplanade, across from the Cafe Promenade and Sorrento's, it is the perfect place to go for room as overflow and those to get crowded, or just to get a quieter place to sit and relax. And then moving on to our venue today, we've of course finished all the venues on board the Quantum of the Seas, amazingly, with how many they have. And today we're going to look at the ship as a whole. Like we did in the first day, we reviewed how the ship got to this point. We're now going to review how the ship turned out. So the big thing is, it's a solid ship. It is actually a very good ship. There's very little to find wrong with the ship itself. Technology, on the other hand, is a completely different story, but the design seems to work. There's very good flow throughout the ship. All this stuff is located on decks 4 and 5, a little bit on 3, and then also 14 and 15 with a little bit on the small 16 deck. So you've got 2 floors that you basically spend all your time on, with a gap of passenger decks, and then 2 more floors. So it's very easy to get around all the different things. Everything's very closely located together. If you're doing entertainment, shopping, any of that kind of stuff, food, it's all in the lower ones for the most part. And then up top, you got your pools, your outdoor activities, more adventurous stuff. So it's very well laid out. And there are very few crowds on board. We aren't at full capacity, but it still feels very empty throughout the ship. You never really hit a crowd. Even when a show's letting out, it doesn't seem to get crowded, so that is a very good design. Something that even, I think the Oasis class, while very open, did have a few points where it did get crowded at times. And the one major thing, she's built for poor weather, so of course we had a lot of bad weather. She handled the crowds perfectly. There's plenty of stuff to do. People use those indoor pools. But a lot of concern was around, what about that hot weather? Everything's indoors, how will she handle that? She seemed to handle it fine. When the weather got hot, people still wanted to be inside because now it was too hot. The sports court being inside meant that people could use it when it was hot. Normally they wouldn't be out exerting themselves, but it was cold on other days and it was still in use. So really it actually functions perfectly well whether it's hot or cold. It truly is a ship that can sail in any weather condition and be fully functional, fully operational, give you everything you want, and offer a great experience. So it truly is an incredible ship design that really does meet all the goals that they promised of it. But looking at a couple more specific details, the good items of the ship, it looks incredible. The level of detail, the quality of everything on this ship is just amazing. Never gets crowded. Can't say that enough. I mean, when you're on a ship with 4,000 to 5,000 people, you don't want to be in a crowd, so it is wide open. There's so many different ways that you can go to get through. The promenades always had one route front to back. Here you've got deck 4, deck 5, they run parallel in parts. They split across on a single deck, so you really sort of have the crowd spreading out a little more, which certainly helps. There's plenty of venues with activities, and they're spread throughout. You got 270 all the way in the back, the Royal Theater all the way in the front, you got Music Hall, the Esplanade. There's so many different venues, and they're spread out enough that everybody just gets to their own little corner of the ship, and it helps make the whole ship feel alive. You've got sound traveling throughout the ship, you've got energy coming out of these venues and traveling throughout the ship. It really does work as a whole. You don't get that sort of disconnect, but at the same time they do sort of disconnect and have their own feeling, their own little vibes, but it still somehow comes all together in the end. And the key to the quantum of the seas, though, at least for that first sailing, but also the second sailing, has been the crew. The crew on board has been incredible. Some of the most polite and attentive crew I have seen on any ship. The level of service that they give is second to absolutely none. They all seem to have phones. That's something that was introduced on the Oasis very heavily 5 years ago, and I really hated it. There are several examples where people were using phones for personal reasons or using phones at inappropriate times and inappropriate places. It just really took away from the experience, but here they seem to have expanded the phones from the top levels to people at a much lower level than I've ever seen before. But I never saw social conversations. I saw very few phones being used in inappropriate times. It seemed like everybody sort of understood the purpose of the phones, but more importantly, they actually utilized them. When you went to guest services, they would always look up who's the best person to call, give a call to them. If they couldn't answer it, find the next person, and they always worked to get you an answer. If they couldn't find the answer themselves, they'd find out who could do it, and instead of sending you running around the ship yourself, they always took care of it. And you saw that from several other departments where they'd pull out a phone book and look up who they needed to talk to. So they certainly are taking advantage of those phones, and I think that really led to that higher quality service that we saw. But the biggest feature of the Quantum of the Seas, and the only thing that saved that first sailing even a little bit, because it really was bad, was the entertainment on this ship. Nick Weir has done an absolutely incredible job of the entertainment on this ship. From Sonic Odyssey, Mamma Mia, Starwater, there is not a single show that does not top every other show in the fleet. I mean, there's no Broadway show at sea that can compare to Mamma Mia at this point. Starwater really cannot be compared to any show probably in the world at this point. Just across the board, you do not want to miss the entertainment on this ship. It is certainly the best at sea, if not on land. And from day one, all the cast were ready to go. Every show was running perfectly from the start. The stage crew, sound technicians, they had everything running perfectly. While other technology on the ship may not have worked, they at least had their act together and ensured that we had great shows. So that was a great thing to see. And of course, I saw most of those shows multiple times because they were so incredible. But there were a few bad things with the design of the ship and operations of the ship. The one being lack of space to take pictures during sailaways or arrivals. And that's a result of the fact that it has so much indoor space. It really takes away from those outdoor areas. Things like the area above the bridge where you could get a 180-degree view before is now enclosed in glass. When you're out on those top decks, you used to have wide open railings, you just take pictures and videos. Now they have large glass panels in the way, so everyone's got to cram into these little slots in the glass in order to get their pictures. So it really makes it difficult to take any pictures or videos during sail away, because if you are behind the glass or in an enclosed area, there's so much reflection and other things in the way that you really can't get anything good out of it. The only other issue is there's no way to get from the front of the ship to the back of the ship if you're in the upper decks in poor weather. If you're on decks 4 and 5, as well as 3, you can easily pass one end to the other, but 14, 15, and 16 are completely disconnected unless you pass outside. So you must either go down to 13 and use a passenger corridor, or if it's raining, you're gonna have to get wet. And what's odd is deck 14, you can pass through the whole indoor pool, you can pass through the outdoor pool, but then at the very end, there's like 10 feet where it's not covered and you must run outside to get to the door to get into the aft end of the ship. So at least those things are improvements they could make as well, because I think if they put some kind of anti-reflective, done some work to make the glass not reflect the inside as much, you could really then have the entire adult solarium open to sit and take beautiful pictures out to sea. At this point, most of the time you just get a picture of the solarium, which isn't what you want. So an anti-reflective coating shouldn't be too difficult to add to Anthem Innovation and even to add to Quantum without a dry dock. The issue of deck 14 and above not being able to pass front to back though, that seems like something they could fix with Anthem Innovation if they just extended that roof line a little more to cover that area. But unfortunately, I doubt there's anything they can do with Quantum at this point, not at least until they go into a dry dock. I think it's a bit of a big project to add a roof there. So hopefully eventually they'll get that fixed, but those really aren't two major flaws. There's not a flaw with passenger flow crowding, with venues not functional. So the ship is incredible as it is. Where the problems come in are the technology. And in this second sailing, while it did feel like a cruise, unlike the first one, there were still issues with technology. The Rural IQ app still does not work right. I could never make a phone call. The messenger went in and out. The calendar worked for the most part, but occasionally would not. And there were a couple instances where the app as a whole just broke during this sailing. The TV system crashed several times during the sailing where you go into it and it simply does not respond. There are also issues with the TV system where there are parts you go into that don't function yet. So that's still a broken system. The photo store is probably the most flawed system on the entire ship. A lot of complaints last week about it not working right, and it was really crowded and a huge mess. This week at least it wasn't that way. There were a lot of open kiosks, it was much emptier, went much smoother, but it still had flaws with things not syncing right, with issues of when you look at the picture, they put a watermark over the face, you really can't see the picture well, and the only way to get rid of that is to purchase the picture, and then if you don't like something you have to get it refunded. So it's really not a proper system at this point. They have to get that worked on a little bit. And the other issue with the systems, the back-to-back process did not work at all, it seems like. It looked like it worked on the first day, but in the end, as we started going through the sailing, we found more and more stuff did not transfer. Our charging account didn't transfer, the photos didn't transfer, a lot of our information didn't transfer, so it seems like that system as well is severely flawed. So there's a lot of technology issues still. At least this sailing, it wasn't noticeable. It didn't come to the surface and really disrupt things, but they were still present underneath. But luckily, technology is digital. It can be changed. It's continuously being changed. We know at least in the entertainment area, they're continuously making improvements. As far as the rest of the ship, improvements are much less visible. They probably are working on it, but they seem less capable of getting things accomplished. So that's probably going to be a much longer wait before you see all those systems fully functional. But at least the ship is working, and that's the key thing. You can't fix the hardware, but you can easily fix the software. So now after 2 sailings on the Quantum of the Seas, I can honestly say that after that first sailing, I swore off the Quantum class as a whole. I still absolutely regret ever purchasing that inaugural sailing. That was a horrible mistake to ever make. Royal Caribbean really let everybody down with that. They promised a huge inaugural sailing that was supposed to be special and didn't even deliver a cruise experience. So it was just pathetic on their part, and really comes down to corporate, and there's so many IT issues that they didn't seem to care to make up for. So it's just an absolute all-around terrible experience. But now the second sailing has been absolutely incredible. The ship's been functioning flawlessly. It really feels like a cruise. Everything seems to be working right. We have all the activities we didn't get on that first sailing. All the things they promised the ship would offer that weren't available last sailing finally are available. So you actually got the Quantum experience for the first time ever. And it's a great experience. I can truly say I cannot wait to try Anthem, especially the key thing was the entertainment. The entertainment was the same on both sailings, but the experience of the ship as a whole was so bad that first sailing that it took away anything the entertainment could do for her. This time, the experience is great and the entertainment is so incredible. I cannot wait to see what they do on Anthem, what they do on Ovation. It's sure to be as incredible. 270 is without a doubt the most incredible theater on sea, if not in the world. And I'm sure whatever shows they come up with for 270 on both of those ships will be incredible. So it's a good thing Anthem will be coming to Bayonne in just 1 year, so hopefully we don't have to wait too long to check out those shows. And of course, a lot of that I think can really be attributed to Nick Weir. We've been hearing it all sailing long, his name being brought up in relation to all these shows and his involvement in different decisions that all seem to be resulting in very positive changes. Things like the fact that Mamma Mia had to be authentic, which is the key thing that I really liked about it. The fact that it was so simplistic, it felt so real, it wasn't overly done, and that was one of his key elements. So I think having Nick Weir on board now, starting with the Quantum of the Seas, and of course Anthem and Ovation, will really make a big difference in the entertainment we see, and that's going to be the key going forwards. You can have all this technology and all these different things going on, but the entertainment, those shows, those are the things that you're going to remember and come back to see on other ships. So that will be key, and that will be the thing that makes the Quantum of the Seas, as well as her sisters, stand out in the industry. So now that we've reviewed the Quantum of the Seas, and while there are a couple little flaws with some of the procedures and technology on board, the ship as a whole is a huge success. And it's time for today's interview, which is very fittingly with the man in charge of everything on board the Quantum of the Seas, the captain, Mr. Shreko Ban.
Very good afternoon, everybody, and on behalf of my team and myself, very warm welcome on board the Quantum of the Seas. Wow, what's happening here, Jim?
So everybody can see us. There we go.
I didn't see this coming my way. Yeah, this was cool. Can we do it again?
So today I'm joined by the captain, Captain Ban, on board the bridge of the Quantum of the Seas. Thanks for joining me, Captain.
Great having you on board.
So you've been on the seas for many years at this point. What first led you to want to be out on the open ocean?
Quite frankly, I simply follow long tradition in my town and in the family. Coming from Dubrovnik, the place on the Adriatic coast in Croatia, with a long tradition maritime. In Dubrovnik we have a second oldest maritime high school, and truly I simply follow tradition without giving any serious thought what I would like to be. And I went to maritime nautical high school, followed by academy. In 91 I graduated and went to sea, joined the merchant marine industry, and the first 7 years I did on different cargo ships all around the world and all type of cargo ships. So I've done it all before I joined cruise industry in 98.
Yeah. So what led you to make that move from cargo to passengers?
Well, during my time with cargo ships, I used to see cruise ships passing by, and I was always wondering what it's like working on such incredible ship.
Yeah.
It looked very different to me and very appealing. And I've been applying different cruise lines, and finally I got offer in 98 in June to join Royal, and I took that offer. I had to step down though. I had to start from scratch when I moved over from merchant marine to cruise industry, and I had to start from scratch, sort of, from second officer position. Then I had to work my way up again. But I never regretted making that move, and I truly have been enjoying being part of this industry and being able to see all these gorgeous places around the world and to socialize with the guests and the crew from all over, to make friends and learn different cultures. It's truly a great experience.
Mm-hmm. So you got your start on the Vision of the Seas, and then eventually you returned to the Vision as the captain. What led you to move over to the Quantum when you're on such a special ship at that point?
We had no saying there, or we have no saying as captains which ship we are going to be working on and for how long. It's entirely a decision made by the office. Mm-hmm. And I have to say I tremendously enjoy working on the Vision, which was my first love when I made that switch from cargo to cruise industry, and spent first 6 years with the Vision. Worked my way up all the way from second officer to staff captain, and then went back as a captain as well. And I had a great time on the Vision, and the company made a decision to send me to Quantum to be a startup team. Mm-hmm. And take her out and do final few months of construction, to be there to inspect and prepare for operation. And I enjoy it so much, and I'm very proud to be on such an incredible ship, truly the most technologically advanced cruise ship in the industry.
So then moving from the Vision to the Quantum is a quantum leap in size, obviously. What training or testing did you have to undergo in order to be ready to take on this new challenge when at the time the ship didn't even exist yet?
Yes, on this ship we introduced lots of new technology. For the first time ever in our fleet, and some of items first time in the industry. And we all as a team had to undertake training on this specific equipment before taking over the ship. So it was lots of additional training, in particular talking bridge. Have new equipment and never seen around our fleet before. We switched from spare equipment, which we used to have on our ships traditionally, and we still have around the fleet, but the Quantum itself introduced the new equipment, the NACOS Platinum, which is SAM Electronics, and we had to go to training to SAM Electronics training facility in Hamburg before, of course, taking over the ship, so we are all ready and familiar with the equipment, and that goes also for some technical installation around the ship.
As captain of the first smart ship, your duties have changed slightly. What new tasks have you had to learn or change?
Well, what we are doing on here for the first time ever, we moved away from making daily announcements from the bridge as part of standard routine around the fleet. On here we do short live update video filming from the bridge, so captain takes guests around the bridge while providing a little update as far as ship position, our sailing that particular day, the next port of call, expected weather, and any such interesting information to guests. So we do it lively. We film a live update and then we put on channel that is available for guests for reviewing at their convenience. Mm-hmm. So it's always there for them available.
Then a typical captain has to worry about his draft and his beam when arriving into a port. With this ship, you also have to worry about the height with things like the funnels and the North Star. What extra procedures must you complete in order to safely pass under the Verrazano Bridge each sailing?
Yeah, that was good observation, actually. Yes, indeed. In addition to the draft and us being mindful of the ship length and beam when transiting narrow channels in and out of harbors or any such confined waters, challenging waters for safe sailing. On here we need to be mindful of North Star, and which is one of our main attractions. That's huge arm that is fitted all the way up top on deck 16, and with the glass capsula that takes guests high up in the air for great viewing of the ship and surrounding area. It's a great feature. However, it creates a certain risk, and we need to be mindful of our air draft increase when North Star is up in the air. And with the North Star fully elevated, our air draft increases by 33 meters from 62 to 95 changes. And this is something we need to bear in mind. And talking about Verrazano Bridge, we need to make sure North Star is in house position all the way down for our safe passing under the bridge, because clearance is around 4 to 5 meters, depends on the tide. So this is something on our checklist to make sure we don't forget.
Yeah. And the captain's welcome reception has been removed from on board the ship, but you've still been able to keep a presence around in all the guest areas. How has your role as a public figure on the ship changed with some of these procedures altered?
Yeah, it's quite a big difference from what we traditionally offered and kept in place, and we still do around the fleet, but not on here. Since we don't have that official formal night when we expect guests to dress up nicely and go to the restaurant and enjoy that particular night where we really make effort to ensure that everybody is dressed properly, and we offer different entertainment slightly upgraded for that particular night. We also offer pictures with the captain, and we normally have a welcome on board reception as well the very same night. But now we have basically formal night every day of the cruise, and that takes much more of my time, because I'm expected to be around and available to guests that feel dressing up and taking a picture with the captain when they see him around, and have a chat with the captain or go dining with the captain. Now we do dining pretty much every night with the guests, different restaurants, and we try to be as much visible on the floor and to maintain good presence on the floor pretty much every night. So it's a bit more work for me, but I like it. That's important part of our hospitality business, for captain to be around and be a host.
And the Quantum of the Seas is basically your ship at this point. You're the one that's going to be taking her to China, and where do you see her going beyond there?
Yes, I'm going to be with Quantum for some time now. For how long, I don't know. As I mentioned earlier, it's entirely up to head office to decide when and where to move me next. But I'll be here to take her over to Asia to open up that run, and I look forward to that. That's going to be a new challenge for us, new ports to visit, and that part of the world I haven't visited yet with the cruise ship, so I look forward to that. We are going to be based there for out of Shanghai for at least, I would say my best guess would be 2 years to start with. Anything beyond the first 2 years, it's hard to say. It's again, company keeps adjusting ships deployments as they see need for it. And but we as a company will be for sure keeping good presence in Asia for some years now, because that market is really booming.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anywhere in particular that you wish they would send her to?
Well, to be honest, anywhere around the world where you go with a cruise ship, normally you go to gorgeous destinations, gorgeous places that you truly enjoy seeing. And I don't really have any preference. I have to say, coming from Europe, from Mediterranean, I feel I feel strongly about being in these waters, and that would probably be my preference.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to say to everyone?
I would like to say hi to everybody, and to take opportunity to welcome people on board the Quantum of the Seas. Whoever is interested to take a cruise on such an incredible ship that truly is a first smart ship in the industry, the most technologically advanced, with amazing venues, different dining concept, a different entertainment from what we traditionally offer and what you see around the industry. Also, she's so modern, so elegant and classy at the same time. And with all these great features like North Star, iFly, and Seaplex, you can have lots of fun on board. You can truly enjoy it. So I welcome everybody on board. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to us today.
You're welcome.
So thank you to Captain Bond for taking the time to speak to me, especially up on the bridge. That was certainly a cool sight to be up there and look out at the ocean and get that nice view that whole interview long. So now this is starting to come to a close for this sailing, so we're going to take a look back at some of the highlights from the last 19 days. So of course it was a very long itinerary, double sailing, starting in Cape Liberty, New Jersey on November 23rd and heading south for 2 days at sea before arriving in Port Canaveral, followed by Nassau, Bahamas, and then Coco Cay, Bahamas, which we of course attempted to tender at, but were unsuccessful and had to go north again with another sea day before the 2 scheduled sea days, and then our arrival back in Cape Liberty on December 1st, turn around and start a second sailing with 2 days at sea, followed by San Juan, Puerto Rico, then Phillipsburg, St. Martin, Fort de France, Martinique, Bridgetown, Barbados, and finally the last port of call, Patisserie, St. Kitts, before 3 days heading back north before arriving back in Cape Liberty, New Jersey tomorrow morning. And during that whole run, we of course had a whole bunch of great arrivals and departures, some beautiful sunsets along the way, and a whole lot of ship spotting. It's been a very royal sailing, which I don't think I've ever experienced before. Normally, you see carnival ships everywhere you look, tons of carnival ships in ports, and even just real carnival ships, not just the carnival family, such as Princess and Holland America, but just a lot of carnival ships. This sailing, we had more Norwegian ships, really, than Carnival, and we had more Royal Caribbean ships than any other brand, which I have never experienced before, so that's been a truly incredible sight. So many great ships, such as the Jewel of the Seas, the Adventure of the Seas, and of course that great day in Nassau where we were located next to the Carnival Dream and the Norwegian Breakaway. And then of course there are, as I mentioned earlier, the incredible shows the Quantum of the Seas offers. Mamma Mia, I of course saw 3 times. It was so incredible. Even at 2.5 hours long, it was worth it to see so many times. Sonic Odyssey, the most vibrant sound that you'll ever experience in a show on board a cruise ship, with the Earth Harp strung right over your heads, gongs surrounding you in the back as well as in front of you, huge drum walls. It is an incredible experience that I also saw 3 times. And then of course Starwater, the most technologically advanced show probably in the world. But in addition to that, just an incredible dance and aerialist act as well. It is an all-around incredible show that is different every time you take a seat. No matter where you sit in that theater, you'll get a slightly different experience. Even going row 1 to 2 to 4, as I mentioned in a previous episode, is 3 completely different experiences. And that is why I saw that one 7 times. So entertainment, as you can clearly tell, was, in my opinion, the top feature of this ship, and one that you really could not get enough of. It was so incredible. But we also had a few specials. We had, of course, 2 sailings, which meant 2 captain's corners. We had a series of robo specials as well as Vistoramas to show off 270. And of course we had the DreamWork events located in the Royal Esplanade. And then we took a look at all the different dynamic dining venues on board, as well as many of the ship's venues, including 270, home of Starwater, the Seaplex, the largest sports complex at sea, and North Star, probably the coolest observation deck in the world. But that, of course, was looking back at the sailing, which means that it is over. And we also need to then look ahead at the next sailing, which is currently scheduled to be the Jewel of the Seas on November 26, 2015. And that will be an 8-night Pacific coastal cruise, scheduled to leave from Vancouver, British Columbia, with a stop in Victoria, followed by Astoria, Oregon, then 1 day at sea, followed by 2 days in San Francisco, a day in Monterey, a day in Santa Barbara, and then ending up in Los Angeles, California. So it's obviously a very port-intensive cruise, and that means it's going to be a little bit more difficult to do a large series like this. This sailing, we had 19 days, and at least half, if not more than half of those were sea days, which were great times to do a lot of filming. And I still, at this point, it is 2:30 in the morning on the last night, and I still got some more scenes I have to go out and shoot. So it's not going to be possible to do a daily series on that sailing. So many ports, so many long days. They are very long port days with very short sailing in between each one. It's a class I've never been on, so it's going to be a much smaller series. I'm not quite sure how I'll do it, but there will be a ship tour and of course all the arrivals, departures, the events that happen on board. But the cruise view will probably be maybe 2 episodes, possibly 3 at most. So it'll be more of a summary episode, more multiple days put together as one, just to cut down on the amount of time it takes to actually produce them so that I can still enjoy the ship and have the time to take everything out on the ship while still getting those episodes in. But that's almost a year away, so who knows what other sailings might come up between now and then, maybe even Anthem. We'll have to wait and see. So that about does it for this sailing of the CruiseView, the first sailing of the CruiseView from onboard the Quantum of the Seas, Royal Caribbean's newest and greatest ship in the world, the first smart ship at sea, and in my opinion, the entertainment queen of the ocean. So once again, I am Picone, and I hope you enjoyed this series. If you haven't seen all the episodes, be sure to go back. Don't forget about the ship tour as well as all the other videos of what went on. And of course, stay tuned for the links to see some of those.